News 24 as we continue the countdown to SONA 2017. Of course, tomorrow night at around 7 p.m. we expect President Jacob Zuma to walk into the National Assembly where he will be delivering his 10th State of the Nation address. Of course, this is what's supposed to give us ideas about the plans of government for the year. As part of that countdown here at News 24, we're going to be speaking to various people just to hear their expectations for SONA 2017. Of course, a lot of it already dominated by the security plans around the State of the Nation address. And to speak with us now is the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition, John Steenhuisen. Good afternoon and welcome to News 24.
Great, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
And let's start off there. Obviously now we've heard the 441 soldiers that were going to be deployed. The DA said this morning that it will be engaging with its legal team around this deployment. What has been the feedback from that?
Well, we've got an ongoing engagement with the legal teams because as the story is progressing, there's more and more issues arising from it, whether the correct notification was done, whether the minister herself gazetted the cooperation with the police in terms of the Defence Act. So the legal teams are still busy working on it. But obviously very concerning for us, this militarisation of the parliamentary precinct and the whole SONA. This is supposed to be a people's precinct. It's supposed to be a day in which the president sets out for the nation the goals of his administration for the year. And what's happening is every year people are being pushed further and further away from Parliament. It's no longer a people's parliament. It's become a militarised precinct that nobody can get near. And so it's very concerning. We've seen a massive increase in the number of military personnel this year. In 2013, 168, 2015, 188, this year 441. And why is President Jacob Zuma so paranoid? What is he so scared about? Why this massive deployment? It's completely over the top, especially given the fact that next week, on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, the president's in exactly the same seat, in exactly the same parliament, with none of this drama that we have to go through.
But obviously the State of the Nation has its different challenges compared to next week when he is there in terms of the people that are present, some of the protests that we're expecting tomorrow. From where you are sitting, what would encourage or see the deployment of such a huge number of the army?
Well, I think what it is, it's a political show of strength by the president. He had a very bad year last year, the local government elections, losing 3 major metros. The SABC rebellion in Parliament, his own backbenchers rebelling against him and his people at the SABC. So I think he has to try and start this year with a big show of force. Now we know he can't win the debate with the force of argument in the House of Parliament. So now he's choosing a show of force rather to establish himself, to show that strength to his opponents both in his party and out.
I mean, the sources we've spoken to at News 24, especially those within the intelligence and also police, is that there is alarm that there could be some form of the words that have been used, uprising, tomorrow ahead of that State of the Nation address and very targeted at President Jacob Zuma. Do you not think that if there is such intelligence gathering, therefore it is necessary for government to take action, a preventative action at that?
Given this government's track record on intelligence and intelligence gathering, from the Browse Mole incident right through, I frankly don't believe or trust any intelligence that they've gathered. If there was a threat, they should have shared it certainly with those of us in Parliament who are part of the preparations, who are going to be part of the mechanics on the day. I think that this last-minute security so-called uprising that's going to happen is a figment of Mr. Mhlobo's imagination and a way to justify ex post facto this massive deployment of security there. In addition, the military are not supposed to form a policing or a public order policing function. The Constitution is very clear that that is a purview of the South African Police Service. Neither are they trained to do so. So even if there was to be an uprising of the like that they're talking about, the military are not the right people to be there to resolve it. We've seen what happens at Marikana when public order policing is done badly and not using the correct protocols. Unleashing the military onto crowds of the public is not a safe thing to do and certainly could lead well to a far more serious situation than would otherwise be the case.
We've spoken to the Minister of Defence and she's basically said that there will be no boots deployed within the parliamentary precinct, nor actually within Cape Town. This is a standby force should there be a calamity, using her word. Does that not reassure you?
Well, we've got reassurance out of the Speaker and the Chairperson this afternoon in a meeting that there will not be a presence of the military outside of the ceremonial duties on the parliamentary precinct. That's all well and good. But I think one has to go back to the President's letter. It's very clear that they are being deployed where the President is, for the purpose of where the President's delivering a SONA. He's delivering a SONA at Parliament. He's not delivering it out at Easterplaat. He's not delivering it out in Newlands. It's at Parliament. And I think that the Minister of Defence is being creative now in trying to make it out that these people are not involved with SONA. They absolutely are involved with SONA. And they are going to be there very much for what the President has said, maintaining law and order.
This seems to be an issue every year. I mean, how do we circumvent it? Because if you look at it, last year there was also this blanket of security around the precinct, and access to outside of the immediate access to the precinct was not as easy. I mean, how else do we get around this so that every year it does not become an issue as it is, or even this escalation, as you were saying, every year?
Well, I think that it's got to be a balance. It's got to be an equilibrium. Of course, we've got to have security in Parliament, but we also have to balance that with making the public precinct of Parliament accessible to South Africans. We can't keep shutting it off and preventing people from coming there. It belongs to the people of South Africa, and if there's one place in South Africa where people should have as free movement as possible and feel comfortable, it should be in their Parliament with their representatives. But that means, as in all parliaments around the world, there has to be some degree of security. But I think what we've seen here over SONA, particularly over the last 3 years, since the arrival of Mr. Mgidlana in Parliament, is a massive imbalance in that careful balance that you have to have. And so I think that we need to have some deep introspection about what is SONA, what should SONA be doing, and how should it actually be addressing the needs of people. I think these outfits, the pomp and ceremony, the parades, are over the top and out of touch with the reality of far too many South Africans on the ground who are.
How would you propose it's actually done then?
Well, I think that it should be an ordinary working day in Parliament. I think the President should arrive. I think there should be some small ceremony. There should be invited guests. But we certainly don't need the drama and extravaganza that we see every year here. It's not required. And frankly, given the state South Africa is in, our economy is in a very bad shape. 8.9 million South Africans without work. Is this what they want to see their members of Parliament doing? I think they'd much rather see them getting down to business, dealing in Parliament with creating policies, with passing laws that address the issues that matter most to them.
So are you suggesting that the pomp and ceremony be done away with and all we have is a normal day of Parliament like we would see on any other given day?
Well, I can guarantee you that with the DA government was running the show, there certainly would be a very much working day of Parliament. There would be some celebration, of course, because it is a significant opening, but not to the extent that it's got to. We really need to calm things down and have introspection about what SONA should be. It's essentially should be the government setting out its vision and shopping list for the year ahead. It shouldn't become this fashion parade and a show of military strength and the like. It's not necessary.
Before we get into the shopping list, we've already heard from the EFF saying that they're continuing with their campaign because President Jacob Zuma, for them, is an illegitimate president, and also that the Speaker and the NCOP chair must do its work in terms of the Public Protector's findings on the Nkandla report. Where does the DA stand on this? I mean, how do you think, because we can agree that Parliament hasn't taken responsibility for how it handled the Nkandla report, and I don't know if you agree that Parliament has neither made President accountable for that. Where do you stand on whether he should be allowed to speak or not?
Well, he is the President of the Republic of South Africa, and the rules of Parliament say that he must come and deliver a opening speech at the beginning of the year. That's in the rules. And he is the democratically elected head of state. I have a great agreement with the fact that I think he's illegitimate in terms of the fact that he violated the Constitution. He's been found guilty of the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court, of violating and failing to uphold his own oath of office. And I think Parliament has failed in its duty to hold him accountable and to make sure that he feels full effect of parliamentary accountability. And that's because you have a Speaker who wears two hats, one as chairperson of the organisation of which he is president, and as Speaker of the National Assembly. So Parliament needs to assert itself far more. But I think we started to see some green shoots, particularly in December last year when you saw the rebellion around the SABC, Parliament reasserting itself. We're hoping that it's going to be a sign of greater things to come. We've got lots of work to do. Eskom, the SABC board, SAA, there's so many other boards where we need to ensure that we are exercising this oversight and accountability. I believe the President must be allowed to deliver his State of the Nation speech. We must be allowed to respond. But the Speaker and the Chairperson mustn't confuse robust engagement within the rules with rebellion. The two are very different. So provided parties stay within the rules and use the rules of Parliament to achieve their goals, it's well and good.
One of the issues that we're expecting the President to speak to is the fact that, and we've heard them speak repeatedly around it since January, they're on overdrive around the land issue, where we've heard them repeatedly say that, you know, this year is going to be the year where they're basically insisting that they're going to go back to the Constitution and use that clause that says that they should be able to expropriate land without the public interest, so basically throwing out the willing seller, willing buyer, which of course you are still in support of the willing buyer, willing seller. If the ANC pushes through with that, where would the DA stand on that?
Well, we are in favour of expropriation in terms of the Constitution, using the Constitution as a guideline. I think that what has happened is you've seen the ANC blaming the willing seller, willing buyer model for the slow pace of land transformation, when it's actually government failure of policy and not providing enough finances behind the program to ensure that we have meaningful land reform. So there are plenty of farmers and farms that are available for land redistribution, but the government has no money to pay them. They paid one land recipient, I think it was 11 billion rand for property in the Pilanesberg. So what you're not seeing is government actually putting up its hand saying, look, the land reform policy that we've implemented is not working. This is what we're going to do to go forward. But it has to be done in terms of the Constitution. Whatever model that you come up with, it has to be constitutional. No law can be passed in the Republic of South Africa that does not pass constitutional muster. So we believe there's a number of other things that can be done to speed up land reform.
What are those? Well,
I mean, there's huge tracts of state-owned land that nobody's talking about. Why are we not? I mean, that should be a relatively easy handover. If there's no money that needs to be required, why are we not parceling up these huge, vast tracts of state-owned land and giving those to land reform beneficiaries? Why are we not speeding up the handing over of title deeds and schemes that have been done? There's far more that we can do without simply just blaming the current system for not working. It's government policy that's not worked. I don't think that there are people who are overwhelmingly resistant to restorative justice in South Africa, which we must have. We have to accept we come from a very painful past. There's been great dispossession in South Africa, and we have to have this restorative justice to ensure that we can recompensate and rebalance the situation. But it's not going to be done through threats of violence or threats of theft of property. Provided it's done constitutionally, we believe that land reform is essential for South Africa going forward if we are to redress imbalances.
And then the second issue is around jobs and economy, obviously. What are you expecting the President to announce on?
Well, I think he's going to have to come up with a plan about how jobs are going to be created. You can't...
The 9-point plan is there?
Well, I don't think... well, as we know, the President didn't even know what his own 9-point plan was in Parliament, as we exposed, so it clearly is not being implemented across government. But we're going to need concrete action, real steps that we're going to be able to measure government on how they create jobs and what type of jobs are going to be created. And also, how we get skills for jobs. We've got millions of school leavers who leave school with no skills to go into the workplace. They can't get into university. It's a funding crisis, and we need to look after that generation of South Africans as well.
If it was Mmusi Maimane going to be standing there tomorrow, what's the one issue they would talk to in terms of addressing the high unemployment rates in this country?
Well, it has to be skills, providing skills so people can get work, and whether those skills are practical trade skills, or whether those skills mean that you go to university and there is proper funding provided by government to ensure that students who can't afford to go to university to study are able to be compensated. No child who wants to study, who qualifies to tertiary education, should be denied that opportunity simply because they can't afford it. So it's education, education, education. Every country around the world that has had to pull itself out of deep trouble has focused like a laser beam on education. What we've seen in South Africa, complete neglect of basic education and a complete underfunding of tertiary education.
But Parliament is a structure that is able to ensure that the executive implements all of the things that we hear. Is it effective, and Do you believe there's more the DA could do in trying to make sure that it actually is effective? Because for a lot of South Africans, it becomes a lot of talking and talking and talking, and it doesn't necessarily translate into real action in their lives.
Well, of course, I mean, people are cynical about Parliament precisely because Parliament often doesn't do right by the people of South Africa, it does right by the political party concerned. And we've seen that. But I think that, as I said to you earlier, I think that what we've seen, particularly near the end of last year, is a far more growing assertiveness across all parties, but most welcome amongst the governing party benches, of exercising this oversight. And so Mr. Motsoneng and the SABC board were not allowed to get away with their shenanigans. You know, the stop's been put to it, that board's been forced out of office, and a new board is to be appointed. And we need to start being far more vigorous in our oversight of the other institutions of state as well.
I mean, it feels like the SABC issue had a lot to do with your persistence and also coupled with the courts. But as the DA, what have you learned from that to use in terms of implementing or to ensure that there is accountability in other spheres of government?
Well, I think what's been very helpful is the precedent now created around those court battles around Mr. Motsoneng, particularly around what is a fit and proper person to fill a position like that. No longer can you just simply appoint somebody because you like them. There has to be, it's an administrative action, and therefore they have to be fit and proper people. So I think the precedent that we've created on the ground now, in our legal jurisprudence as well, is going to stand us in good stead for board appointments going forward. And you know, you've done it with Mr. Menzi Simelane, we've done it now with Mr. Motsoneng. So there is that body of law now that assists us in ensuring that appointments that are made are the right appointments.
Priorities for you for the year?
We've got to focus like a laser beam on jobs and skills, retooling our economy and retooling the way government works to ensure that we're meeting that need. We cannot continue along this path of just having a lost generation of South Africans who simply cannot afford to study and simply fall in a gap where they're not able to actually go out and find work, and that there are no jobs. So the economy and jobs, #1 priority for us this year.
Some of us have said that the DA is finding itself overshadowed by the EFF in terms of a voice within Parliament. Can we see some change in tactics from the DA?
Well, no, and I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if you think about what we were able to achieve over the last year in Parliament, and you actually look at real achievements, I think that the DA has definitely outperformed any other party in the National Assembly. And certainly it's not our style to disrupt and to act outside the rules of Parliament and the law of the Republic of South Africa. So we are very robust, and we take the Speaker on, and those who watch Parliament will know we give the ANC a really tough time, but you know, that doesn't extend to throwing things around, to breaking Parliament and undermining Parliament's role, because South Africa can only work if we've got a working Parliament. That's what it underpins a multi-party democracy. And so it's important that Parliament functions. The ANC would like nothing better than to write Parliament off, and we're not going to let them do that.
Okay, there we have it. That was the Democratic Alliance's Chief Whip in the National Assembly, John Steenhuisen, talking to us as we count down to SONA 2017. Obviously for them, he said that the priorities will be, they will want President Jacob Zuma to talk to how he will be dealing with the jobs and the economy, especially the lost generation, as they are calling it, the ones without skills or without jobs. That's it from us for now here on News 24. Continue watching, and we'll bring you more voices ahead of 2017 SONA. Thank you.